Planning a person's celebration of life is an honor, but it's also a bit daunting when you're a care partner who's dealing with grief at the same time. Verna Klimack is a funeral celebrant. She helps families plan meaningful memorials and celebrations, and today she's going to share with us some ideas about things to consider. Can you give me another example of how a family personalized a celebration?
I sure can. There was one family I remember. Their grandfather was a real truck driver, had a passion for trucks, and he had restored an old truck and had painted it a robin egg blue color. So when he passed away, the family wanted to have an urn that would be really meaningful to them and a reminder of their father and grandfather. So the sons found a piston from an old engine identical to the truck that their dad had restored, hollowed out the piston, and painted it that same robin egg blue color. And that became such a precious treasure for the family to know that that's Grandpa.
Oh, I'll bet. When a person dies, some things have to happen quite quickly, don't they? I wonder if you could walk us through what needs to happen.
What makes planning a funeral very stressful at times is the fact that so much has to be done in a very short period of time. Some people have compared it to planning a wedding, only instead of months of preparation, you've got maybe 3 to 5 days to get all the prep work in, contact family members, and make the arrangements for the funeral. First of all, there is the decision of, do you even want a funeral? Many families are opting not to have anything, or else not wanting a traditional type service, but moving more to a celebration of life. And they may choose to do it in a funeral home, in a recreational facility, a community center, school gymnasium, or even in a senior center. There's a recreational area or gathering place, or even homes, backyards. There's many options. The first thing, though, is you do need to contact the funeral home one way or the other, because the body needs to be dealt with. And funeral homes have what they call removal services. So if the person passed away in a care facility, that care facility would want to know in advance, which funeral home is handling the arrangements, and then they would contact that funeral home for the body to then be taken away. And then it depends, too, whether the family has chosen to have cremation or embalming. And again, there's no right or wrong way of doing this. It's about preference and what fits for the family. I know some families will choose to have embalming done with the funeral service and the body present at the service, and then cremation afterwards. And then the family would then take the cremation, the cremated urns in the urn, and either take it home or place it in a niche somewhere, or it could even be an earth burial too. If it is a traditional funeral service where the body is present in a casket, usually there is a burial immediately after.
So if someone has passed away in a care facility, you don't need to call the funeral home, the facility does? Or
They
the
can,
care home?
but then you would have to follow up with the funeral home right away.
Oh, okay.
And in some cases where the funeral home is anticipating the call, they might even contact you just to say, hey, we've got your mom here, she's fine. We'll look after arrangements. Let's set up a time when we can come in to plan everything.
Okay.
And it's also the funeral home that provides the death certificate. And many times you need copies of that as you go about the legalities of closing accounts and dealing with those finishing up things, I guess you could put it that way.
So once the funeral home's been contacted, what happens next?
You meet with a funeral director, and that meeting can easily take 2 to 3 hours. And they will ask for all sorts of vital statistics, information, and discuss specifically what the family is wanting, like in terms of picking a casket, is there a burial plot needed, or if it's cremation. And then also the service, what do they want? What I've noticed is many families will do pre-planning. They will have arranged with the funeral home. It could be even years in advance. They've bought a package. But what the package did not include is what will actually happen at the funeral. like who will speak, what kind of music, what type of service do they want? Do they want a religious service? Do they want a service with a clergy person present? Or are they just wanting someone who would function more as a celebrant or an MC? And families are often left floundering because they never discussed this. They just knew that arrangements were done. And so now what do we do? And so my role as a celebrant is to talk to them specifically about the content of the service.
Are there any other details that need to be attended to if your loved one was living in a care home?
Yes, because not only do you have funeral arrangements to take care of, you also have to tend to the personal effects of their loved one. And if they lived in a care home, they have maybe some furniture there, some items, and families may not know this, but all of a sudden they are told by the care home that that room needs to be totally cleared out within 24 to 48 hours. So in the midst of planning for a funeral and contacting everybody about the funeral, now you have the task of cleaning out a room. And that's so exhausting because you're dealing and touching with personal memorabilia, and everything triggers a memory, and it can become very exhausting.
Do you have any examples of a memorial service or celebration of life where the person was really celebrated and it was very personalized?
A lot of it is not on what is said, but what is seen. For instance, you can have a display set up. I did a service recently. The gentleman who passed away was a journeyman carpenter, and the family had all the tools that he had when their dad was first starting out. And so they had a display of his tool belt and a wooden chair that he had built, and various tools on display. And that really personalized it because that's who he was, and those were the tools that he held in his very own hands. And you could feel that presence, that energy there, and they go, yeah, that was him. Another incident or story is there was this lady, she was known for making homemade wine. And it was customary whenever someone would come to visit her that you could not leave until you had a glass of wine with her. And we thought for this service that we needed to have one last toast. And so at the end of the service, the funeral directors came forward and they had on a tray little wine glasses filled with some wine, and they were passing it around. Now, the other dimension to this story is her homemade wine was not that great. And so when I was announcing that we would be having this, I said, and by the way, her son-in-law bought the wine. And you could just feel the relief in the room because it was like, okay, we got good stuff here. And but at the same time, we did that toast, and as people were leaving the chapel area, on the front was a picture of her, and we put a wine glass by her picture. So everyone, as they were leaving, took their empty wine glass and placed it next to her picture, had their words, their final respects, and then left the chapel area. And it made for a very meaningful service.
And healing takes time, doesn't it?
And some people think it should happen real fast.
Yeah.
That's what I have found. And what I tell people is you need to give yourself permission to grieve, and it's okay. And what I always include in my services is a little bit of what I call grief education, because what it does is it validates what they are experiencing. To know that emotionally they'll be all over the place, to know that you might feel like you're going crazy. You're not. It's just how it is. And to know that grief has a life and an energy all of its own. How it manifests in our lives is just as unique as we are. And to be gentle with themselves at times like this.
Thank you so much, Verna.
Thank you.